Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live, talk radio without the static. Email your questions and comments to lynn at pghcitypaper.com. And now your host, Lynn Cullen.
Oh, hello there, and welcome to another Monday. October 9th, 7th. Getting ahead of myself here. October 7th, in fact, Columbus Day. Whoop-de-doo. I don't know where to start. This is what I say every day. I don't know where to start. Dear God in heaven. I don't know why I take such refuge in the obituaries, but I do. I mean, because to at least remind oneself that people still live and die, the world goes on, and some people live their lives in an exemplary fashion because we spend so much time, at least on this program, talking about how so many people do not. I would like to share one obituary with you, just to start us off on the right track, okay? Because this is a life well lived. Stephen, that door, I think, should be closed. Before we get into what we know we're going to have to talk about today, let's talk about the life of a good man, Connie Hawkins. Connie Hawkins was a basketball player. He was a member of the Basketball Hall of Fame. And his story is unlike any story of anybody who ended up playing professional basketball. And for one thing, he did not start his pro career with the NBA until he was 27 years old, even though he was sought by lots of schools when he was a 17-year-old in high school. It's what happened in the intervening 10 years that makes his story compelling. Connie Hawkins was somebody who played in a dazzling kind of way that was very unique at that time. It was before Michael Jordan. He signed with the University of Iowa. Never played with them at all because of something that happened. And what happened is there was a scandal. And I'm unclear, but it might have been at the University of Iowa, a scandal about point shaving in games. And this would have been 1961. He had never played on the school's team. He was never charged with a crime. He never shaved any points. But he had the misfortune of knowing the two New York men, he was also from New York, who had devised the point shaving scheme. And thus this young kid was pulled into this scandal. Imagine you're 17, 18 years old. You're falsely accused. You are held by detectives, listen to this, in a hotel room for 14 days. For 14 days, without charges, held there, given no change of clothes, given nothing, held there to terrorize you, to bully you into admitting to something you hadn't done. And he did not. he continued to maintain his innocence. The University of Iowa expelled him, and no other college would have him. And the stench of the scandal followed Connie wherever he went. In fact, the NBA refused to draft him, and the NBA even went further and formally barred him from playing in the NBA. He had never been charged with anything. He had never been convicted of anything. He was an innocent man. He played with the Globetrotters for 3 years. And then he came to Pittsburgh to join an ABA team, the American Basketball Association, which had sprung up. And Pittsburgh had a team, the Pittsburgh Pipers. Connie Hawkins was their star. The season he came here, he led the ABA in scoring, points per game. He captured the season MVP award, the playoff MVP award. This guy was amazing. He took the Pipers to a national title, an ABA title. There were 2 attorneys here in Pittsburgh, a husband and a wife, Roz and David Littman. And Connie stayed with them. They brought him into their home. It's funny because Roz, who I later would meet and call friend, Roz couldn't have been more than 4 feet 11 at most. She was not 5 feet tall. She was this big. Connie Hawkins was, who the heck knows. He was up there, 6'7", 6'8". What a pair they would have made. And Roz said to him, "We're going to sue. You need to be in the NBA. What's happened to you is a travesty." And so Roz and her husband David filed an antitrust suit against the National Basketball Association for banning Connie Hawkins. This case went on for 3 years. Can you imagine? Little Roz Littman battling the entire NBA. I'm not sure. I think it went to the Supreme Court. Roz had argued before the Supreme Court on numerous occasions. And she took him down. Little Roz Littman took down the NBA. The settlement was more than $1 million to Connie Hawkins, but more importantly, it led to the implementation of free agency in the NBA. It was a huge, huge case. So Roz and David Littman got Connie into the NBA, and with a nice little money cushion too. And he went on to just have a stellar career. But because he entered at the age of 27 after playing for the Globetrotters and all this other time, he did not have a long career. His body was already pretty much shot. And when he retired, he remained very close to the Littmans and to Pittsburgh. And after the turmoil of the late 60s, when cities burned, black neighborhoods burned, Connie Hawkins created a league, the Connie Hawkins League, which became the top summer basketball circuit in the country and was in existence for over 40 years. He said he wanted to create a program to help unite the city. This was a good man. And by all accounts, everybody who knew him said he was not only an extraordinary athlete, but he was an extraordinary human being who never let bitterness get in his way of living a wonderful, exemplary life. He died Friday at the age of 75. Roz Littman died last year. She went on to become the major counsel for the ACLU nationally. And I knew her from sitting on the state board of the ACLU. What a wondrous being she was. And she's the one who first told me about Connie Hawkins staying with her and how her and her husband took down the NBA. So, I don't know that I'd heard of Connie Hawkins League. I hadn't a sense of Connie Hawkins, but I have on very good authority that he was a special human being. I don't feel like talking much about Corker and Trump. I'm glad that Senator Corker has finally been saying out loud what the rest of us have been saying for months and months and months. And I'm glad he tells us that many, many other Republicans in the Congress feel the same way about Donald Trump, namely that he is incompetent and that he is a danger to the country and the world. And yet I don't take much comfort in Corker's doing this. It's late. He was an early, enthusiastic supporter of Donald Trump. He voted almost lock, stock, and barrel with Donald Trump. The fact that he finds him a reprehensible human being and out of control commander-in-chief, anyone can see. I could see it a long time ago. I did not aid and abet Donald Trump's ascendancy to this consequential office he holds, but Bob Corker did. Now he speaks out. I have a measure of gratefulness for that, just because it might scare a few others of his party out. And this could be the beginning of an effort by the Republican Party to minimize the damage Trump has done to their party, to the country, to the world. And maybe they're setting up a possibility of trying to take him out with is it the 25th Amendment, I believe, that a president is found to be incapable of performing his duties. Maybe that's what this is starting to build. I'm sure you've heard Corker's statements. He concerns me. He would have to concern anyone who cares about our nation. Yeah. But why didn't he say that 8 months ago? He made very clear before he was elected president. He made very clear before the Republican Party allowed him to take on their mantle, to be their leader, their nominee. He made very clear before all of that he was a concern. Unbelievable. And of course, again, showing the stupidity of Donald Trump, Bob Corker is in a position as head of the Foreign Relations Committee to stymie a lot of efforts that Trump might embark upon. I have here in my hand just a little list of some of what this dangerous man and his administration and those who serve him have been doing while we get distracted by statues and taking a knee and that kind of thing. Here's just some of the rules from one agency that have been overturned. One governmental agency. There are a lot of them. And Trump's nominees and now heads of those agencies are quietly every day throwing out pieces of progress that had been made. Here's some of what has happened in just one. It's a pretty consequential one. We've talked about it before. It's the Environmental Protection Agency. Here are some of the rules that have been wiped away. I'm not going to read them all. There's way too many. Way too many. They're gone. Obama-era flood standards for federal infrastructure. Oh, I can see why the EPA would think that was totally unnecessary. Flood protection? Overturned a ban on a potentially harmful insecticide that is banned all over Europe. That's now it's free to be used on the food we eat. The EPA has lifted a freeze on new coal leases on public land, on our land. The EPA has canceled a requirement for oil and gas companies to report methane emissions. In other words, there could be methane spewing from a plant just a few miles from here, and they are under no obligation to report it to the public. Trump's EPA revoked a rule that prevented coal. Listen to this. I remember talking about this when it happened, but listen to this. There was a rule that prevented coal companies from dumping their mining debris into the local stream, the babbling brook that ran nearby. Yeah. Who would be opposed to a rule like that? That rule is now gone. Trump has approved the Keystone XL pipeline, approved the Dakota Access pipeline. Those are all reversals. He has repealed a ban on offshore oil and gas drilling in the Arctic and the Atlantic. He has proposed, listen to this, I don't even know what this means, but it sounds horrifying. He has proposed the use of seismic air guns for gas and oil exploration in the Atlantic. Seismic air guns. That means they're going to somehow shoot into the crust of the earth. What could happen to look for more oil? They are in the middle of repealing and replacing the Clean Power Plan. They are in the middle of withdrawing us from the Paris Climate Agreement. They are in the middle of rescinding a rule that protected wetlands and tributaries under the Clean Water Act. They are reviewing fuel efficiency standards for cars and trucks. They have recommended shrinking over 10 national parks. They are reviewing 12 marine protected areas that I guess they want to rape and pillage. They are reviewing limits on toxic discharges from power plants into public waterways. So, therefore, coal companies throwing all their crap into our water. And now they're looking to see if they aren't going to allow toxic crap from being put into our waterways. They have announced plans to rescind water pollution regulations for fracking on federal land and Indian land. They have reviewed and are going to change safety regulations on offshore drilling. They have proposed ending a restriction on exploratory drilling in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. And they have proposed a repeal of a requirement for reporting emissions on federal highways. Environmental groups are fighting back, but they're not getting very far. And as I said last week, anybody ever tells you again, when there's a Democrat and a Republican running for office, there's not a dime's worth of difference between them. Punch their lights out for me, would you? Because this is where the impact on our life happens. This. The power of a president to take over these agencies whose intent was to protect us and make them into candy stores for polluters and corporate interests. Oh, my. Aaron writes, any word on the one-woman show that you did to benefit Planned Parenthood becoming available for purchase? Well, that's an idea. I don't think we thought of it. Who the hell would want it? Okay, we got one sale here. Aaron. We do have a really nice video of it. Really good video. I don't know. Also, I'm sleeping a little less comfortably these days because of the North Korea situation. Nicholas Kristof, a man who I admire, and I think 3 other reporters recently returned from North Korea, where they were shown around. Nicholas Kristof had been to North Korea before. He wrote a piece in yesterday's New York Times. I'm not going to read it to you, but I will read you the last sentence. I leave North Korea with the same sense of foreboding that I felt after leaving Saddam Hussein's Iraq in 2002. That'd be right before we went in. War is preventable, says Kristof, but I'm not sure it will be prevented. You know, I have to admit, sort of like I was in La La Land about Trump potentially becoming president, this North Korean saber-rattling thing, I have found it so disquieting that I think pushed it out of my head and said, well, it couldn't possibly happen. We're not going to end up in a nuclear war. Surely somebody's going to not let that happen. After reading Kristof and what he saw in North Korea and their certainty that the United States intends to destroy them, they're not so sure. And another reporter who went along said it was very unsettling to hear ordinary North Koreans talk of war with the U.S. with calm acceptance and buy their government's propaganda about certain victory over the United States. I'm still slogging through the Vietnam War documentary. It's amazing. And one need only see the first few episodes to see how misunderstandings, misreadings, a hair trigger reaction can result in a conflagration that will kill hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people. With North Korea, we're talking about millions of people. One plane shot down. One boat attacked. One mistake made on one side or the other, and you can see how this could happen. I believe it was Senator Corker who brought up his fear of World War III. The other reporter who went, Carol Giacomo, said, this stalemate we have now is a dangerous one. Allowing this shouting match and muscle flexing to gather momentum can come to no good. Donald Trump is literally putting us and the world in danger, in true danger, by treating his office like it's a reality show. It's the only way he knows how to navigate it. And he has clearly now scared Bob Corker, who is a serious man whose specialty is foreign affairs and has terrified him now enough to actually envision World War III. So, I'm not going to talk about the Pence and the stupid little PR gambit he did yesterday, because that's what they want us to do. They want us to take our eyes off the prize while they repeal all of these regulations, while they pollute and foul our air, our water, while they bring us to the brink of nuclear war. We're supposed to talk about Pence walking out of a football stadium. Not me. We're supposed to talk about Harvey Weinstein. Stein. No, not me. These are now distractions. This is an extraordinarily dangerous man. I'm sorry, it's a bitch to get up on a Monday and have to come here and, say these things. But you know that what I'm saying is true. You know that what I'm saying is not hyped up. And we have to, in our resistance, be smart. Be smart. Not fight it out on Twitter. Organize. Organize. Get to work. It's unbelievable. As I said before, Republicans only know how to win elections. They do not know how to do the job that they have won. They do not know how to govern. We can see it in Washington. We can see it in Harrisburg, where they control the whole show. And even controlling the show, they can't figure out how to pass a budget. Oh, they have time to try to get into women's wombs. They've got time to do all that kind of stuff, fiddle around on the edges, deprive women of rights, of medical care. But actual governance, it is beyond them. I wish I had something funny. Anybody got anything funny? God knows I don't. And I it's not for lack of trying, man. I read all weekend and looked for things. I mean, the best thing I found was the example of Connie Hawkins' life, of being falsely accused of having your dream taken from you and of not becoming a bitter jerk. Steven's looking for something funny. Nah. Lots of luck. I found something, again, that buttresses my thoughts about technology and my jaundiced view. Obviously, I acknowledge all the wonderful stuff that technology does for us. But I don't know why we never understand that all of this stuff comes with a price and with all kinds of unintended consequences. It's sort of like all these cities, including Pittsburgh, falling all over themselves to get Amazon's new headquarters. And I have said with no support from anybody. I hope we don't, because Amazon will come in and destroy everything we love about this city. Yeah, they'll bring in people. They'll have jobs. But that which is Pittsburgh will be subsumed by their culture. And it's not a culture I admire or want. It will price people out of their homes. It will obliterate neighborhoods. There was a good piece written by, I think he was at CMU, a professor at CMU, about supporting me. He didn't say, I'm supporting Lynn Cullen. He just said, be careful of what you wish for. But we never learn. We never learn. Okay, before I get to that, let's get some of your emails in here. Chuck writes, I think what bothers me most about the North Korean situation is Trump's blatant taunting of Kim Jong-un. Oh, it didn't go over well in North Korea. Corker had it right when he called the White House an adult daycare. Taunting on this level belongs to the schoolyard, not in the White House. Yeah, we all know that, don't we, Chuck? But the president doesn't. And his enablers stand by. Chuck writes, there is no greater threat to this nation and this planet right now than Donald Trump. God knows. Not ISIS, not North Korea. Donald Trump should be treated like we treat all national security threats. It's absolutely true. It's funny, isn't it? Huh? It's funny. Kinda. Roger said, attempted humor. The Pirates haven't lost in over a week. Well, it did make me laugh. I don't suppose you can make a joke about the Steelers. No. Roger, it did make me laugh. He said, I'm sorry, that's the best I got. I'm trying not to slip my wrists. Well, and yeah, it's not funny. It's not funny. Steven's come up with, did you see Darlene Harris decided to drive her car down a path in what is it, North Park or West Park? I don't know where she was. She was, where that's for pedestrians. She is absolutely freaked out about bike lanes and all of this stuff. And I have, voiced my displeasure sometimes while acknowledging that it is actually moving in the right direction. But she's a piece of work. And I never can laugh when she And then Stephen wanted me to remind us that those assholes from the Westboro Baptist Church, what I said the other day, they should be ignored. What were there, 4 of them? 5 of them? There was they're a joke, okay? They only exist because we show up and give them coverage. The way you kill people like them is by ignoring them. It's how you destroy somebody like Donald Trump, too, in large part. Don't fall for the goads he puts out. Don't, we just keep falling for this shit. And Westboro Baptist Church, you know how principled they are. You know how much they really care about what they're doing. The day they did it was Thursday, Saturday, Thursday, Friday. What the fuck? Friday. And if you recall, that was a pretty rainy day. And it started raining pretty hard, so they canceled almost all of the protests that they were going to. They said, oh, it's raining, we're going home. So that's a principled crowd all the way around. What a bunch of jerks. Little Tony said, here's a funny obit I came across a week ago. Oh, thanks. This is for Carol Ann Barrett. This was in the Post-Gazette. Carol spent her life training fleas for the circus and was a competition weightlifter in Russia. In her spare time, she enjoyed walking in space and reading to her pet rocks. She discovered Atlantis, where she will be joining her husband, his royal ascendant, James Barrett. Rest in peace, Queen of Candyland. Our mom rocked. How'd I miss that one? Wow. Boy, her kids were having some fun with that. Jeez. David writes, it's John Lennon's birthday. Yeah. He'd be 77. Wow. Okay, so now I'm just going to make you a little more unhappy. This Nicholas Carr has written a bunch of books, and I think he's a really smart cookie. And he's written a piece. This was in the Wall Street Journal's review section on Saturday, and he points out some facts. Okay, iPhone. The typical owner, this is average, looks at this thing 80 times a day. I'm way ahead of that. I am so far ahead of that. For almost everybody now, this thing, all over the world, this thing is their constant companion. It is our trusty factotum. It is our teacher. It is our secretary. It is our confessor, our guru. We are inseparable. The smartphone, this thing, which didn't even exist 20 years ago, this thing has become the repository of everything of import to us. The repository of ourselves, recording and dispensing our words, sounds, images, anything we experience, who we are. It's all here. In a 2015 Gallup survey, this number would be really higher, more than half of people with smartphones said they could not imagine living without one. Now, here's what's weird about that. I lived most of my life without one. It's possible. In fact, it's totally pleasurable. In fact, life was better, I suspect. I didn't know I needed one. Ha! And now I'm enslaved to it. It is hard, Carr writes, to imagine another product that has provided so many useful functions in such a small, handy form. So, we have given these things an unprecedented hold on our attention. These things influence our thinking, our behavior. And here's the question he asks, and it's one I've asked too. So what happens to our minds when we allow a single tool such dominion over us. And here's where I would say nothing good. We've got a caller, and I got a buzz.
Hey, Lynn, it's Mike in D.C.
Hi, Mike.
So I read this study that said that the problem with the cell phone is that it interrupts your train of thought.
Yeah.
Not that when you're bored, you go to it, but you're in the middle of something, and it beeps, and you go look it up.
That's right.
And it's just your aunt sending you an email or nonsense.
And what they know, I mean,
So I
just want to say study after study after study after study shows that our attention, when it gets, taken like that or divided, our ability to reason is harmed and our production is harmed. It does nothing good. And recent research shows, and I hate to tell you this, that simply having it in the room with you, even if it's not on, it still has a deleterious impact. It's like we're always half in the back of our head waiting for it.
Well, not me, because I've turned off all my notifications. So if you send me an email, I don't get a ding. Even if you call me, most of the day it's off, so I don't get interrupted with a sales call.
That's helpful.
Now, I do use it the other way, and it has made a difference. It really has. Forcing myself to just be bored. Like, I'll be in a car at a red light, and I think, I should check. And I was like, no, just be bored. Just be bored. I spent entire summers just being bored as a kid. I can make it through a 90-second red light.
Well, would anybody who actually knows stuff about how our brains work will tell you that being bored is an incredibly important thing in our lives, and most people never allow it anymore. It allows us. How do you think people come up with ideas? They come up with ideas when there's nothing distracting them, and all they've got is their own minds.
Which is scary to some people. They don't want to have their own minds. They want to be distracted from their own minds.
What these studies are showing is there is absolutely no doubt that these things are making us stupider. You know why? You don't have to remember. People don't feel they have to know anything. They don't have to remember anything because you just Google it. And so our brains are not being used like they used to be used. We are not carefully sort of remembering certain things because we don't have to. And that means that our brains are not being exercised like they used to be exercised. And here's what this says, the Google effect. Because search engines are continually available to us, we may often be in a state of not feeling we need to encode any information internally. Because when you need it, you just look it up. And unfortunately, that task of encoding memory in our biological memories is how we end up having in our heads the kind of rich terrain that allows us to think, to give rise to critical thinking, conceptual thinking, because we have encoded stuff in our brains. It's a rich thing up there. Mine is pretty rich, but I look at young people now and all of us that we've stopped growing our brains. We simply have handed it off to these gizmos, and no matter how much information is swirling around us and available to us on here, the less well-stocked our own memories are, our own little search engine, our brains, the less information we will have in our brains to use to think. Does that make sense to people?
Yeah, and it doesn't even help conversation, because back in the day, you'd say,
yes,
I wonder how beer is made.
Right.
And I would say, well, it has something to do with yeast. and I know it has something to do with hops. I wonder if it's the right order. And you and I would have a discussion about it.
Mm-hmm.
What you knew about it, what I knew about it. And we would come to, a proposal of what it was. Now, you just go to Google, how is beer made? And you'll get videos and everything.
Yep.
So it's even affecting our interpersonal relationships because you and I don't have to figure anything out.
Yeah.
We don't have to think critically because we have a machine that tells
That's right.
us exactly how it's done.
No, and believe me, more and more psychologists are seeing the impact, and there's no here's what's scary. There's no stopping this. So humans are becoming stupider by virtue of artificial intelligence. We are handing off our brains. We're taking the lazy way out, and when we constrict let me just read one little sentence to you, too. When we constrict our capacity for reasoning and recall or transfer those skills to a thing, we sacrifice our ability to turn information into knowledge. We get the data. We got the data here, but we're losing the meaning. And upgrading our gadgets isn't solving the problem. We need to give our minds room to do what they were designed to do, to think. And that means stuffing this thing, doing what you have done, turning it off as much as you're willing to, being bored, not always reaching for it. God, we're destroying ourselves with this stuff.
And just memorizing stuff affects the way the brain is wired.
Yes.
And that's why kids' brains are literally being wired differently than yours and mine.
That's right.
Like when they made us memorize poems in school.
Right.
You think, why do I got to memorize this stupid poem?
Yeah.
But it wasn't until after you memorized it and you met in front of the class you said, oh, that's what that means.
Yeah.
So it takes your brain time to figure out what each of those words mean in conjunction with each other and what each sentence means in conjunction with each other. And you're not going to do that if you don't have to memorize anything.
Yeah. So each of us in our own way has got to start fighting back. And I don't know. It's a losing battle, I'm afraid, on a global scale. I mean, all you have to do is walk down. All you have to do is go anywhere and see everybody's head down now in their phones. So I got another caller, and thank you.
Sure.
Bye. Caller? Hello.
Good morning, Lynn. It's Dave.
Hi, Dave.
Dave from Washington.
Hi.
I hate my phone. I hate my cell phone with a passion. It's destroyed everything. It's destroyed email. It's destroyed writing. It's destroyed conversation. I'm sitting at a bar a couple of months ago, and the name Richard Mendenhall came up. I'm like, he was a first-round draft pick. No, he wasn't. The guy says, no, he wasn't. He was the second round. I said, no. And years ago, we would have sat down and had a discussion of, Richard Mendenhall was the first-round draft pick, blah, blah, blah. No, the guy looks it up. Oh, yeah, he was the first-round draft pick. Boom. End of conversation right there.
Yep.
You're putting all of your knowledge and all of your brain into, like, an external hard drive. And heaven help you if you lose it. A kid was in the office the other day, and I had to send him down to AAA. He goes, where's AAA? I said, you go out to the driveway and you take a right, and it's right there in front of you. The kid insisted on plugging it into his telephone. I'm like, no, you don't have to do that. You just go out here and take a right. It's right there in front of you. You go to the end of the driveway there, and look, you can see it 100 yards down the road. The kid insisted on plugging it into his telephone to drive him there.
You know what? This sounds like I had to buy a new car because my old one died. And I picked it up Friday. And the guy who sold it to me said, now let me show you how to work it. And I was thinking, Jesus, used to be able, you drive a car, you knew how to work it. And then he starts showing me all this stuff. Look at this. What, you feeling hungry, he says? You just push this button and you say, where's the nearest Chipotle? And then you push that button and it tells you where to go. Do you want to, and you can then, and if somebody calls you, you can have their, whatever they're saying read to you by Siri, and then you can push a little button right there on the steering wheel and say, Siri, tell so-and-so this, that, and the other thing. And I'm sitting there thinking, what the fuck?
What does this have to do with a car?
I don't want to do that will you leave me alone? I just want to drive. God damn it.
I don't take my phone to work. I don't take my phone to work because, for one thing, I'm at work.
Well,
don't bother me while I'm at work.
Yeah, well.
It's important. My daughter, if my kid has to get a hold of me, she knows how to get a hold of me at work. I'll leave my phone at home. I don't make phone calls on it.
Well, let me tell you,
phone.
You're a dinosaur, but in other ways you're ahead of me. Because I now am one of those people who, if I realize, which I did the other day, I left to go to dinner with some people, and I left my phone at home by accident. And I felt anxious.
Like you left your wallet or something.
Like, what if, I started saying to myself, what if, and I had to remind myself, you lived 60 goddamn years.
Exactly.
Jesus.
Exactly. Now, I got my phone almost 4 years ago. I had a 2-year contract, and I swore when the 2-year contract expired, I was just going to let it go. I don't use it. I don't make phone calls on it because cell phone to cell phone, you can't really carry on a conversation. There's too much of a delay.
I agree.
It's ruined email. I emailed somebody I haven't talked to in a year. Nice, big, long, beautiful email, and I get a response, something like, LOL, and then it says, sent, by my Sprint phone. I'm like, for God's sakes, because no one's going to sit there and type out a big, long email on their little phone.
No.
So it's completely, nobody sits in front of their computer and writes emails anymore either.
No, and this article that I was talking about says it is impacting. These things are impacting our ability to socially interact. We're messing ourselves up big time, and there's no, as I said, stopping it. I mean, an individual like you or whatever, we can all put up our little fights, but it's over. It's done.
It's good for playing the jukebox at the bar, though. I'll tell you that.
All right, I gotta go. I gotta go. Okay. You. Thank you. I got another caller. I think. Hello.
Yes. Good morning, Lynn.
Yes.
Good morning, Lynn. Yes. Lynn, I'm going to just repeat this real quickly here. You got to get back to the Tao. And what does that mean? Real quickly here. Get back to nature. What we're doing, I figured this out listening to your discussions. We're worshiping each other by talking on a telephone. Does that make any sense?
You're not going to start lecturing me about the Tao again, are you?
No, a little bit. Just think about this.
No.
By the telephone,
no.
It's actually worshiping each other as people.
No.
When we're missing the source. The source of all the power is in nature, and the quietude of nature. That's where your source of wisdom will come from.
Okay, listen.
Not from your cell phones.
All right. I agree that people, the nicest thing you can do for your psyche, for your head, for everything is to sit outside in a place and just listen to the sounds of nature, the smell of nature, if you can, if they're not leaf blowers going off all over the place and sirens and all of that.
Yes.
But I can't, and I'm running out of time, so I'm going to let you go. But don't keep doing this to me. I am not going to become a Taoist, okay?
You are a Taoist.
I am in my way. I am.
Yes, you are.
All right.
You are. So you just said that Taoist, you said go back to nature.
I did. Okay. Bye. Got another caller here. Hello.
Hello, this is Clarence. I'm only calling because everybody else did. Have a nice day.
Bye. Jesus Christ. That was funny. Quit while you're ahead. All right. And really quick, I'm going to get in some emails, but the show's over, guys. Here's the emails coming at you. Henry Wright, last year on this date, we were talking about how there was only 1 month left until the election. Little did we know that on October 28th, Comey would make a statement that would possibly put Donald Trump in the White House. I do think that was the end of it. And just a comment about Facebook ads and new Google and Yahoo ads, which are purchased by Russia. It takes a naive electorate in order for those ads to work. Well, it takes also, you defer to these things. I have a friend who's always saying, he'll say something and I'll say, where'd you hear that? And he'll say, on the internet. And he's smart. I said, what are you, a fucking fool? What do you mean on the internet? What the hell does that mean? Oh, don't get me started. One thing this election has done is reveal to us who and what, well, you say our neighbors really are. Well, Henry, I would say who we are. Who we are. This is us.
I don't know. Mark writes, Happy Columbus Day from Columbus, Ohio. I don't think Bob Corker's a guy Trump wants to mess around with. He's not a nice guy. Remember the ad against Harold Ford with the white gal winking and saying, Harold, give me a call. I sure do. That was Corker. That was Corker's ad. These people are so vile. If you are watching Vietnam, you see how much work it takes to be a war president. Trump isn't looking to work that hard. He just likes the pompous posturing. And it sounds like Paddock bought 33 guns in the past year. Seems like that ought to cause a red flag somewhere, right? No, of course not. This is the United States of America. And Richard Spencer has the boys marching with their torches in Charlottesville again. He's trying to get a permit or whatever to come over and speak at Ohio State. If he's successful, it could be real trouble. Oh, dear God in heaven, I hate all these people. Ansel, I've been a photographer since the 70s. In the old days, it meant much more to say I'm a photographer than it does now. With my digital camera, I can pretty much hold down the button and the camera will shoot pictures at 10 frames per second. And those will be pretty good images. In the old days, photography required the photographer to be smart, to measure depth of field, to measure light. These days, pull out your smartphone. You're a photographer. And we're the dumber for it. Yeah, this is what my point is. We're making ourselves stupid. And Barbara writes, distracted driving is a deadly behavior. Federal estimates suggest that distraction contributes to 16% of all fatal crashes. Yeah. And yet, this is how, my car has all these gizmos in it. Don't worry, I'll never use them. I don't want them. I paid for them, I guess. I don't want them. I don't like it. But other people do. And man, they're going to town. This is our world now, guys. Hang on. Hang on. Or run. I mean, run to the middle of nowhere if there are no nowheres left and contemplate your navel. You'll be in better shape. Seriously. All right. Happy to depress you for just another day. It's wonderful. Thank you for your interaction. Whoop and goodbye.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper or its advertisers.